focusing on composition, focusing on storytelling, that's always going to be a lot more important than just being like, ooh, here's a 360 camera, let me do a cool tiny world view or super wide angle. If you don't want people to go, oh, that's a 360 camera right when they see the shot, well, don't distract them with 360 elements. Just use it to tell the story. Hey everybody, how you guys doing today? Thank you for coming out to this workshop. So first of all, before we kick things off, we're talking about the Antigravity A1 8K 360 drone. Brian, you were here for a little bit already. Sir, what's your name? Was it? Caesar. That's a cool name, man. Do you know anything? Have you heard of 360 drones before? Okay, so it's just a little bit. So you're not too deep into it. You just heard of it. Okay, cool. So basically today we're going to go through and talk about what, like how to use 360 drones and how to change your mindset away from shooting like you would normally on a traditional drone. Think DJI Mavic 3, Mavic 4, a camera like that, switching over to what you need to do to fly with a 360 camera in the sky, and the benefits that come with it, as well as potentially some trade-offs compared to your traditional drones. So first of all, I'm just gonna do a little fun intro clip here for you guys. So, just a short little edit, but some of the drone shots that you saw there kind of gives a little bit of a preview of kind of like why 360 drones are different than traditional drones. Obviously, you saw a lot of different camera angle changes, maybe a bit more than you would do for to your own taste, but either way, 360 drones give you that freedom of doing that composition in post-production. So a little introduction of myself. My name is David Zhou. I'm a photographer, filmmaker, and YouTuber, and I talk about camera gear on my channel, basically everything photography, filmmaking, and the camera gear that makes it possible. I'm based out of Tampa, Florida, and after this workshop, if you want to chat, Q&A, stuff like that, or even throughout, if you have any questions at all, more than happy to talk through it. But if you have questions afterwards, please feel free to message me on Instagram. I love talking camera gear, love talking photography, filmmaking. Did you have a question just now? Yes. Yes. You just one direction. So that's what we're going to talk about. And that's what I'm going to show you. So let's talk about that. So a 360 camera, right, is filming a 8K sphere, 4K upwards, 4K downwards with 180 degrees. When you stitch that together, you're basically getting, when you look at a real estate, when you look at a house or an apartment online and you get those like 360 photos of the house, right? You can see everything around you. That's the video or photos, because it can also take photos, but that's the video file you're getting. You're able to fly through and you're able to see all around you. And what that means is when you're flying, it doesn't really matter what you're looking at while you're flying. It just matters where your drone is, because you're recording in every direction and you get to pick where you want to point the camera afterwards. It doesn't matter if the subject's behind, to the side, or in front. Now, there is a good and the bad of fly now, frame later. Fly now, frame later is fantastic. It sounds great, and it is great because, like we said, you can fly and you can focus on the flying, and later you can focus on getting that composition where the camera's pointed, right? The bad is that people will go into it with a misconception of, oh, I can just point the camera wherever, I'll just fly around and it'll look good. That's not true, right? Obviously. If you go into it without an idea of what you want, you're probably going to come out not with what you were expecting. You might find something cool, but more than likely, you're not going to get the shot that you were picturing. So let's talk about kind of planning it, the plan shot. So this was literally the first day I got the anti-gravity drone. I've already flown quite a few drones. I review a lot of camera gear, so I'm familiar with it. And I've already used a lot of 360 cameras. So I went into it with that idea and I said, okay, I have this idea. I want to fly behind my friend on a motorcycle, and I want to go past them, and I want the camera to orbit around and follow them. This would technically normally be a very difficult shot, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of the results that we got, right? So I'm flying along. Relatively complex movement. And so if I had to ask you, how many takes do you think that would take for you to try to get, right? This took only a single take. This was the very first attempt. We only had like 45 minutes of film because this was around sunset. I really wanted to get to shooting with this drone the very first day. And all of the camera work is done in software, and the drone flying is all I had to think about. So this is like my formula for nailing it on the first take every single time. And it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's just kind of the order of operations that I think about. The very first step is I would pre-visualize the shot that you want. So I wanted a shot where where the camera is orbiting around. So when you think about it, you want to think, where does the camera need to be for it to do such a thing, right? You just want to pre-visualize. Then when you're flying, you want to be aware of where your subject is. Maybe that's a person on a motorcycle. Maybe that's just a building, like a beautiful church, and you want to get an orbit shot. You want to understand where the subject is from the camera. And then the third thing that's the most important is understanding how fast you're flying in relation to it. So if, let's say it's a church and you're just filming an orbit, obviously you want to be mindful of, are you doing a really crazy fast flight, or are you doing it slowly? If you're following someone, are you matching their speed, or are you trying to overtake them? Those are really all the things that you need to think about. An example I was talking about earlier in a previous workshop is basically, you know how on like a movie set, there's like a dolly, a camera dolly, right? So somebody's on a track and then they're focusing on the camera, and then there's a person pushing. So there's three parts to that. The track is your pre-visualization, is your pre-production. Where is that track going to go? Where is that drone going to go? Then when you're flying the drone, that's you just pushing the dolly, right? The speed at which you're pushing it, right? And then, I guess, following the track that you had laid out in your mind. Then when you get home and take the footage off of the drone, either on your phone or on a computer, that's when you get to go back in and simulate being the cameraman and pointing the camera. So what's nice is you don't have to be the cameraman and the dolly pusher at the same time anymore. So with a traditional drone, here's my very expensive, very high resolution animation. I kid, it's just a quick animation I put together, but this is how you would normally have to fly a traditional drone while tracking a subject. Think about all the different things that you're thinking about. You are thinking about rotating the drone. You're going from flying the drone from a forward position to a sideways position to a backing up position. You have no idea what's behind you. You're also pushing the drone up into the air for that shot. This is a mimic of the shot that I just showed you. And the whole time you have to make sure that the subject is in the frame. If you pan too fast and the subject is out of frame, we have to redo the take. If you pan too slow and the subject creeps too far ahead, it changes what you were trying to get. Now, this is what it would have taken to do this with a traditional drone or a FPV drone, right? Like if I go back and show you again, right? This shot right here, right? You would have had to turn around the drone, back up the drone, go up with the drone, all while focusing on the subject, making sure they're in the shot. That's how you would have had to do it before. What do you think it looks like with the 360 drone in terms of where the drone is going to be? So just straight and up. Let's see if that's correct. That's correct. All I had to do was fly next to the person, past the person, go up, tell them, hey, go ahead, go faster, and then just keep going up. Think about how much easier that is now. So in a lot of situations, this means that you can get things on the first take. This also means that you can get more shots done in a single day. And it also means that, let's say, if you're using this for on a production, you're more efficient, you're all of that. But let's say you're doing this for more casual shooting, more run and gun shooting. It just means that you can do a lot more, a lot faster, pack it away and move on to the next spot. You don't have to be stuck in the same place doing it, every shot over and over again. This is especially useful, and we'll talk about use cases later, but this is especially useful if you're going to be doing things like live events, weddings, sports, things where you can't say, hey, let's go back and do that again, right? You have to nail it on your first try. And depending on what you do you shoot, what do you normally shoot, out of curiosity? Film? Okay, just everything? General film? Okay, yeah. So you wear a lot of hats. Depending on what project, you're doing a lot of different things. How about yourself when it comes to? Mini, okay. And then what do you, you told me before that obviously you're a commercial pilot. Do you? Okay, adventure movies. So kind of like personal projects then? Okay, so for both of those situations, this is where the tool really works, because you're not a dedicated drone pilot. You're not spending hundreds of hours in there. So that would exclude you from probably wanting to fly FPV, which is highly technical. There's a lot of manual control, a lot of practice needed. Traditional drones, obviously a lot easier to pilot, but again, still a lot more muscle memory, a lot more practice. And sometimes if you're shooting an adventure movie, maybe it's worth it to go back through and do multiple takes. Maybe sometimes you just want to get the shot and get out. This is where this drone really shines. And if you're, depending on the project, the 360 camera opens up a lot of possibilities. So let me show you a little POV of what it looked like in my goggles when I was flying, right? Just to show you just how easy it was. Slow down just a bit. Okay, and then book it. And so I'm just talking to him over the phone. He has a phone in his helmet. Slow down just a bit. And let me see if I can mute. I cannot, so the audio is playing. And then, but basically, literally just track side by side, go past him, pull up ahead, and then here I'm just kind of peeking over because, again, what you see in the goggles doesn't have to be what you see in the footage, so I can fly up, and I just kind of kept peeking because I was trying to check if I was at the right height, right? Just to make sure. That was just a final gut check. And when I was done with that shot, I was literally like, I think we got it. And I played it back real quick. Oh, so, we have it on screen here. Slow down just a bit. What is 14 meters per second? And then book it in... I'm actually really curious about that. I don't know how to translate that, but somewhere around 25, 30 miles an hour. So you can, if you pull the footage onto your phone, you can do, or iPad, as you're flying. So what you will see is you will be in the 360 with the goggles on. Okay. So when you're flying with the goggles on, you can literally look at every angle. So when I was looking at this, this is literally where I was looking, but I could turn my head to look wherever. So earlier in the other workshop, I was explaining a little bit more about how this works. And we have the goggles and the drone over there set up to demo. So you can put that on after this workshop. Two things I want you to take a look at. One, pull up some actual footage that was shot on the drone, and you kind of look around. You'll see what the image quality looks like, and you'll kind of get a sense of what it would look like to fly the drone. The second mode on there is going to be a simulation, and that's just so you can fly around in like a 3D simulation to kind of get a feeling for what it would feel like. Combine those two things together, and you'll get a really good understanding of what it feels like. But when you're flying, you basically see the whole 360 sphere. Here's where it's a little bit tricky. You're not going to be able to exactly preview what it's going to look like, the end product right away. However, you can kind of watch it back and just point at the direction that you're looking at to see, does the composition make sense, right? I shot this shot, and because I've had experience shooting on just regular 360 cameras, I generally know how wide the field of view is going to be. So I knew based on the flight, I was like, this is going to be perfect. Once I track the subject in post-production, it'll do exactly what I want to do. And it was exactly how it turned out to be. So there's no guesswork. The very first few times you do it, the only reason why it might surprise you is just because you're new to editing 360 footage. Or once you understand how 360 footage looks, there is no guesswork. It's just a different way of thinking. It's not the same as, just checking on your back of your camera, but you can almost visualize it in your head on how it's going to look. But yes, so the concept here, basically to understand on how to switch from traditional drone flying to 360 flying is just what I'm calling the flight path, right? What we talked about, that dolly track, is understanding it. Once you can visualize that flight path, that dolly track, basically whenever you shoot, that's all you have to think about. You no longer have to think about, okay, I have to make sure I can fly sideways and backwards, and I got to make sure there's nothing behind me and I need a spotter. It's kind of interesting because one thing is, I know it is a requirement to have a spotter to keep an eye on the drone for safety. In these VR goggles, I've actually felt the most spatially aware of where I am because you feel like you're there. You're not looking and disconnected on a screen. You're literally in the experience, and you can see what's immediately near you. And so once you start flying and with 360 drones, the only thing you need to do is to put yourself into that mindset of, I'm pushing the dolly cart right now. I don't have to worry about where the camera's pointed as long as the dolly cart's in the correct place. The dolly cart should not be 10 foot lower than the subject or 10 feet higher than the subject. As long as if I'm trying to get a side-by-side tracking, it's got to be next to them. I know what distance I want, and that's what you maintain. And you take that into any shoot, and you can make it, and you can basically create any shot you want without the stress of worrying about the exact composition the day of. So another example, 2 weeks after I had gotten the drone, I went over to an ATV park. I reached out to the rental company that was there, and I was like, "Hey, would you guys be interested in like just some social media advertisements? It's just some fun footage for you guys to use to advertise. In exchange, if I could get like an hour of rental, so I could shoot some footage with this drone." They were cool with it. Only caveat was we only had an hour, and an hour is not a very long time to get, you know, like a minute or 2 or 3 minutes worth to cut together. And so this was a little reel that we put together with literally just about probably 30 minutes of flying, and very little coordination. It's not like we had headsets. So if they went too fast or too slow, I don't get to communicate with them. I just have to fly the drone and try and get a shot. And I only had 30 minutes, or 30 to 45 minutes to really fly. And this is what we were able to end up getting away with. All I was thinking about was I wanted kinetic shots that felt like it had speed, it had action, it had, you know, movement in there. And so this is what we were able to get. Just a quick little thing for them to throw onto social media. That one's gnarly. So, quick little edit, super easy. For this one, tracking the subjects, right? So my entire time is the only thing I need to think about is, okay, the camera's in the air. What is ultimately going to be on screen? The ATV. That's what's going to be when I edit. The ATV is going to be on screen. So whatever I was flying, my only thought was, where is my subject now? So okay, now I'm going to do. This is my hero. This is the person I want on camera. Where do I need to be near them? And so that's where I'm looking, right? Some of them I'm trying to anticipate. So that one shot where it was like a really crazy 180 flip because I crossed frame. I didn't mean to get that close. In reality, I think I was within 6 inches of them. So that was almost bad, but it wasn't bad. But the idea was that I wanted to cut them off and fly in front. Because again, in my head, I was like, okay, the shot's going to be like follow and then track this way. So all I was like, all right, what I need to do is I need to cut in front of them. That's all I need to do. So I would keep an eye on them, saw how fast they were going, saw how fast I was going, and trying to just beat them to there. And my goal was to beat them there by a few feet. I ended up only beating them there by about 6 inches. So kind of cut it close. But the shot came out really good. And also, you would not have been able to do that on a traditional drone or even an FPV drone unless you really planned it and tried really hard to make that happen. And yet, what turned out to be originally kind of a messed up shot that, you know, like that was way too close. Because it was 360, I was still able to do the camera movement to make it work. And now, instead, it turned into this extremely kinetic, fun-looking shot. And yeah, cut well into it. And again, 30 minutes, was able to get a bunch of footage with zero communication. I just flew and I just shot with it. They loved it. Yeah, they absolutely loved it. You know, because end of the day, you know, they wanted something that was different, that would get people's attention. So obviously, drone footage is going to be more exciting than just like a GoPro mounted. For the rest of the full cut, I actually did cut in, like, we mounted GoPros to the ATV. We got some shots like handheld, off the track, just kind of standing there, you know, pan shots, cut it all together. But this was the version I sent them where it was like, hey, here's just the drone footage, so you can go ahead and post it. And they loved it. They loved it because it was fun. It was different, especially some of the shots that looked, you know, faster than humanly possible to manipulate and shoot on a regular drone. Any questions? Okay. All right, cool. So use cases, right? There's a bunch of different use cases for for drones like these. The first one will be narrative and storytelling. Pretty obviously, pre-planned shots makes getting pre-planned shots even easier. If there's some crazy camera moves, really crazy transitions, you can easily do that with this. Alternatively, the only other way you would have been able to do this traditionally would have been with something like an FPV drone and some really skilled piloting. For real estate, it's super easy because it's super great because, one, obviously the being able to reframe is great, but also being able to capture those 360 photos, 360 videos, putting it in as part of like real estate listings. The thing I think that it's absolutely great for is capturing things where you do not get to do a second chance of. So live events, weddings, sports events, being able to capture these on the first try is super critical. And lastly, personal filming, adventure filming, vlogging, stuff like that is a perfect companion drone to have with you. So here I'm just going to show really quickly a few camera moves that kind of really go to show, maybe get your brain thinking about what you would personally use it for. They're going to be pretty easy examples to start off with. The green is basically what I'm doing the day of, and then the red is what I'm doing in software. So what I'm doing in day of for this shot, a very typical standard reveal shot or establishing shot is just pushing forward. Yes, this would be pretty easy to get on traditional drone. You just have to make sure you press and hold your gimbal tilt up wheel. But it's even easier on a 360 drone because all I had to do was just fly it forward. So it's the fact that 360 drones can give you extremely dynamic, action-packed, fast movements, and also 360 drones are great for giving you extremely slow, methodical movements that, you know, a 15-second slow pan up, you could do that. Whereas with a traditional camera or the traditional drone, you might be fighting with your controller. You might, you know, have a little micro movement into that you don't want. You have to go back and reshoot again. With the 360 drone, you don't have that issue. And again, green, the day of, I just flew forward, and then in post-production, I just tilted up. So for the next one, this is using the software's deep tracking. So this is the ability to go into the software, just draw a square around a subject and go, hey, I want the camera locked onto this. And I was showing you this earlier, right? And so I knew for this shot, I just wanted to get a follow shot. So all I did was follow him. I just kept that in mind. I dragged, in the software, I just dragged a square on him so the camera movement is perfectly stable on him. This took so little effort. It was literally flying, pressing, holding a trigger, and just kind of following behind them. But the results feel a lot more complicated than that. For example, another thing, if you pull up into the air, this will give you a nice little like God's eye view looking downwards. So there's a lot you can do. Yes, I am. But like, you know, so like there's two different modes. There is literally the auto fly mode where you can drag and just let go of the controller and just be like, follow this subject. And it will do that. For this one, I was steering myself because I was still running like a pretty beta version of the software when I had this drone. So I was just like, I'm just gonna fly everything myself. But yeah, so I was literally I was like, let me fly. Originally, I was like, let me fly low. Let me just kind of get like something that's fast feeling. And I tried to fly as low as I could and just really try to get behind these dust clouds. So super simple. Really took zero effort in terms of creating this. Here's another easy one, flying forward, but then along the side of a subject, and then just keyframing in a start point and an end point so that as it's flying, it's just panning the camera around super simply like that. So like I said, the drone is really good for creating dynamic movements, and it's also really good for creating just really simple movements and getting them smooth on the first try. There's another one where you can use the track subject or keyframing to kind of whip the camera around at a really fast pace. That'd be more difficult to do. That'd be more difficult to do with a traditional drone. So again, just a quick little whip around and then pull back, right? So just a lot easier to do these like floaty movements that is just requires less effort. And then finally, combining a few more things in here. Again, really, really simple flight movements. And I'm not being too creative here. I'm just kind of showing some relatively simple and or maybe a little bit complex camera movements, but nothing crazy. People have done crazier stuff in terms of transitions, in terms of camera movements. But here's one where I'm just flying forward, a nice little tilt, following the boat, pulling backwards, and then letting go of the keyframe so that way it can just kind of give me a nice little wide reveal. So again, all that is panned up, lock on to subject, and then let go of the lock, and then just let it just stay fixed, and then it just points that way. So again, when you're flying, you just need an idea in your head or a few ideas in your head. In this scenario, I didn't have the end shot in mind. I just saw an interesting subject, and I thought, okay, if I fly this way near the interesting subject, there's multiple different frames I could come out of this with, and then I can decide later in post. So if you're like, say, adventure filming, and there's a lot of stuff happening around that you don't have control over, but you can document, you can just fly some interesting flight paths and then go back and kind of create very, very compelling camera movements. So here's the reality check portion real quick. There are downsides to using a 360 drone that, you know, most people don't think about. The drone is called an 8K drone, but that is 8K with 4K pointed upwards for 180 degrees, 4K pointed downwards for 180 degrees. When you actually go to frame up, you're probably using about 2.7K of one side of the sensor because you're just looking for footage on one side. So realistically, you're getting 2.7K of resolution. So That means if you're shooting a narrative piece and it is this crazy establishing shot that you're going to hold on to for like 15 seconds with a title card and some narration, you probably want maximum image quality. And if it's a simple shot, I would err towards using something with a bigger sensor, something you're more like a traditional drone, like a Mavic 4 Pro or something like that. But on the flip side of that, where you do gain the benefit from, where you lose in resolution, you gain in versatility. You would never be able to turn one shot into multiple shots with a traditional drone. You would never be able to go back and kind of fix the camera movement with a traditional drone. And so what you lose in resolution, you gain in versatility. And it's a great tool to have in your tool belt. I have my Mavic 3 Pro when I want to pull some really slow orbit shots, push-in shots, just establishing shots that I know are going to leave on screen. But then every other time, really, if I don't have a shot list blocked out already, or if it's a complicated camera move, I reach for my A1 because it's just an easier tool to execute my vision. And if it's only going to be 5 seconds to fill the frame, color grading is going to do more of a difference in terms of blending it with your footage than just raw resolution, right? It's going to be storytelling. It's going to be more king there. So that's how I always see it. Is what actually can capture the shot that will tell my story, less so than just what has the most resolution. Now, if you are interested in getting this drone or just kind of want to think about some tips, here are 3 tips I want to leave with. So the first one is going to be obviously filmmaking over gimmicks, focusing on composition, focusing on storytelling. That's always going to be a lot more important than just being like, ooh, here's a 360 camera. Let me do a cool tiny world view or super, super wide angle. Focusing on the filmmaking aspect will, if you don't want people to go, oh, that's a 360 camera right when they see the shot, well, don't distract them with 360 elements. Just use it to tell the story. So focusing on that is the first tip. The second one is mastering the keyframe. Sometimes the keyframe transitions can feel robotic when you're using the shots. It feels like it transitions a little too abruptly. And that's not necessarily because it's an issue with the software. It's rather that we've never really edited footage, 360 footage like this before. So there's a learning process that kind of everyone using this technology is kind of going through, of understanding how to keyframe out, like transitioning from a pan into maybe like a spin into like whatever, however many camera moves you want to do. Understanding and mastering the keyframe will yield so much results because it really will help smooth out all of those movements. So that's number 2. The final tip that I want to leave everyone with is going to be understanding your focal length. One really useful thing to understand is obviously when you're filming is to understand what focal length is on your camera. You would never go into a shoot and just slap on a random lens and then not look at your screen and just go, man, I really hope this is filling out the frame right. Well, in this scenario, obviously you're shooting 8K, you're shooting 360. So it's going to be wider than you think it is. So there are a few modes to de-warp, to pick your perspective when you go to edit. There's mega, ultra, de-warp. They're basically different varying levels of width and how much you're going to de-warp the image. The one I always use is linear. It is unfortunately going to crop into the image the most. It's going to give you that 2.7K resolution look, but it gives you the most natural looking shot that doesn't feel like it's like a 360 camera. And when you do click on that, the software tells you that it's a 110-degree field of view. And I was just really curious, so I did the conversion. I was like, what is a 110-degree field of view to like a 35mm lens? So that comes out to be a 15mm lens. So it is one thing to think about if you fly this drone or use 360 cameras like this, is that when you fly the drone, just always think the drone has a 15mm lens on it, because that's going to matter on how close you bring your camera to your subject. If the drone is over here and my subject's over there, I can't be upset if I go into the software and go, man, my subject's really tiny. Well, yeah, you shot a 15mm lens with a subject super far away. So understand that so that way you can place the drone in the correct spot. So to cap off basically this presentation and this workshop is basically understanding the tool. It is a completely different type of camera, and now we're putting it in the air. It is a 360 camera in the sky. And there is so much possibility and potential that it can unlock in terms of creativity. It also gives so much versatility in terms of ease of use and being able to capture these shots that it really does require a reframing of our mindset to fly with the drone correctly. But the first step is to remember that the day of when you're flying with this drone, you are now you're trying to put the drone or the camera where it needs to be in relation to the subject. And you can worry about the framing and the composition and the transition and the movement later. All right. that's my workshop on 360 drones and how to shoot with them. Thank you guys so much for your time.